The question is that this bill be now read a second time. The member for Canberra.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Greenhouse and Energy Minimum Standards Amendment Administrative Changes Bill. The Act that we are amending today has been around for just over a decade, introduced by the Gillard government in 2012. Since its introduction, it has proved to be instrumental in reducing emissions, particularly from Australian households. Research suggests that the average Australian family saves between $140 and $220 on their electricity bill each and every year as a result of the measures brought in through this bill. And for Australian families facing cost of living pressures at the moment, reductions in costs like this are incredibly important. There is so much that can be done to reduce our power prices and our household emissions in one go. Last week, I was very fortunate to be able to visit the home of a constituent of mine, Martin Di Domenico, in Curtin, along with the Assistant Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Jenny McAllister, who spoke to Martin about the absolutely incredible renovation he had just finished in his home. Martin's home is one half of a duplex built in the 1960s. Before the renovation, his home was feeling cold and was very inefficient, with the warmth actually literally leaking out of the house. His home pre-renovation had an energy efficiency rating of 3.4 stars. Today, his home is rated at a massive 7.2 stars, which is a huge transformation. And it was achieved through some relatively simple changes, including the use of double glazing glass in the windows, the installation of PV solar panels, the use of insulation and the electrification of the hot water system of heating and cooling and of the stove. Martin's home is now snug and airtight. It has an air leakage permeability rate a quarter of the average Canberra home. This wasn't achieved with any special construction materials or equipment either. Standard residential construction materials and methodologies were used, which keep construction costs low and provided for excellent thermal bang for buck. And as Canberrans know, we face extreme weather in our city. We have obviously very cold winters but quite hot in summer, so we often can rely heavily on air conditioning and heating, which brings up energy costs and the emissions from our homes. So making these changes is really important, both for our bank balance and for the environment. Martin's home is now fully electric and the gas meter has been decommissioned. The result of all this, while Martin's home is 29% smaller than the average Canberra residence, it now consumes 68% less energy than that same average. I want to really thank Martin for inviting us into his home and congratulate him and the architects and scientists at Lighthouse Architecture and Science for their incredible achievement of winning the Housing Industry Association Australian Green Smart Sustainable Home of the Year. And from visiting his home, this seems very well deserved, because not only was it efficient, and we heard that he had cut his energy bills by 70%, but this home was absolutely beautiful and comfortable, and you know, you could just feel that it was actually keeping warmer from the sun coming through the windows, simple things like that. And I can relate just a little bit, not having done such a beautiful renovation, but also living in a 1960s Canberra home, that when we moved in, we put some insulation in. It makes a huge difference and definitely does cut your power bills. Deputy Speaker, the Albanese Labor government is helping Australians to save on energy and save on their bills. We want to make every watt count and put downward pressure on every Australian's power bills while lowering their emissions, because we know that the energy bills are placing significant strain on Australian businesses and households. And we know that after 10 years of inaction by the former government, Australians are paying for the energy that is literally leaking out of their front doors. The Climate Council's 2023 Smarter Energy Use, How to Cut Energy Bills and Climate Harm report found that combining electrification and practical efficiency upgrades could save an average Australian household $2,005 each year. And this is something that most Australians don't think about all that often. Most Australians know more about the performance of their washing machine or their fridge than they do about the performance of their home. And that's why we're seeking to give families the tools they need to make their homes more comfortable and more affordable to run. This bill is just part of the effort to bring those savings to Australians. And Deputy Speaker, I want to briefly touch on some of those other measures that are being introduced by our government. We're investing over $1.7 billion to help businesses and households, including those in social housing, access energy savings and upgrades through the Save Energy, Save on Bills package. The package makes energy performance upgrades, like those seen in Martin's home, more accessible and affordable. Through the Household Energy Savings Fund, the Albanese government is investing $1 billion into Clean Energy Finance Corporation concessional loans and mortgages through partnership with financial institutions to incentivise household energy performance upgrades. These loans will help more than 110,000 households reach a net zero future and lower their energy bills. This could include upgrades to homes with battery-ready solar PV, better insulation and windows and modern appliances. Through the same fund, we're investing a further $300 million to support energy efficiency upgrades to public and social housing in collaboration with states and territories. This funding will help Australians in social housing properties upgrade the energy performance of their homes. It's estimated that up to 60,000 social housing properties will save around 30% on their energy consumption each year. Through our decarbonisation boost, the Albanese government is investing $314 million to allow small and medium-sized businesses to deduct an additional 20% of the cost of assets that support decarbonisation. The bonus tax deduction will be available for up to $100,000 of total eligible expenditure, with the bonus tax deduction capped at $20,000. This will help up to 3.8 million small and medium-sized businesses with ongoing energy savings in the financial year 24-25. From 2025, the government's investment of almost $25 million into the nationwide House Energy Rating Scheme will expand and upgrade the scheme to apply to existing homes, which means people will be able to seek a star rating of their home's energy performance. And of course, Deputy Speaker, the measures in this bill, which expands and modernises the Greenhouse Energy Minimum Standards Act, known as the GEMS Act, to help Australian households and businesses save on bills and emissions. The main purpose of the GEMS Act is to set minimum energy performance standards and energy labelling requirements for products and appliances. The GEMS Act currently regulates 24 products, setting minimum energy performance standards and energy labelling requirements for products and appliances. In 2021-22, labelling and standards are estimated to have saved Australian households and businesses between $1.3 and $2 billion in avoided energy costs. They were estimated to have delivered emissions savings of between 4.1 and 6.3 million tonnes in 2021-22, about a quarter of South Australia's annual emissions. The bill we're discussing today will implement technical changes arising from the 2019 independent review of the GEMS Act. The review found that reform was required to modernise the Act to reflect changes in the energy operating environment and to build on the already significant outcomes of this successful program. The main provisions of this amendment will do a number of things. First, it will reduce the administrative burden for bespoke products. It will streamline the application of test standards and the granting of exemptions. It will reform grandfathering provisions, and it will grant powers to the regulator regarding the payment of fees. The government is also considering further improvements to the regulation of energy performance standards as part of the development of the National Energy Performance Strategy. This bill introduces a first phase of GEMS Act amendments targeted to streamline the implementation of the GEMS scheme and to reduce unnecessary burden on our regulated community. I just want to address the specifics of what this legislation will achieve. Part 1 of the bill would amend the Act to provide flexibility for suppliers of customised products in complying with the Act by refining the registration requirements for such products. This part of the bill would implement Recommendation 13 of the review. Schedule 1 Part 2 of Schedule 1 of the bill would provide greater flexibility for how suppliers of GEMS products can demonstrate compliance with a GEMS determination. Suppliers often apply for an exemption from being subject to a GEMS determination ahead of a GEMS determination coming into force, as they have identified potential issues with meeting the new requirements and want certainty as to how their product will be dealt with ahead of time. Part 3 would improve the timeliness of exemptions during the transition to new requirements and would allow exemptions to be more targeted. Part 4 of the bill would provide greater flexibility in defining product classes to ensure effective descriptions of product classes in GEMS determinations. This will assist with regulation of certain subsets of models identified by the GEMS regulator as being difficult to administer, for example for products like motors, which may be supplied within other equipment. Part 5 of the bill would allow certain other requirements to be made under determinations which have labelling requirements but do not set minimum standards for energy use. And Part 6 of the bill would amend the Act so that the GEMS regulator position can be occupied by a person acting as an SES employee, and that references to the GEMS regulator refer to the substantive acting SES employee in that position, as the case may be. This would improve the timeliness, efficiency and effectiveness of the administration of the Act when the substantive GEMS regulator is absent from duty or when long-term acting arrangements are in place. It would also modernise references to the GEMS regulator in the Act to align with best practice drafting standards. Part 7 of the bill would extend the grandfathering exemptions from the prohibition on supplying or offering to supply a model of a product that is not registered. The amendments of this part would also implement Recommendation 18 of the review. And finally, Part 8 of the bill would give the GEMS regulator the power to extend the time to pay application fees that would otherwise be payable. Deputy Speaker, I commend this bill to the House, and I'm very proud of the efforts that our government is taking to make it easier for Australian households to not only cut their emissions but cut their power bills. And this is no more important than in a place like Canberra with extreme weather, cold winters, hot summers, and a lot of older housing stock that isn't as well insulated, and there are lots of simple changes that these policies can help support you to make so that you can cut your emissions and have a more comfortable home, as well as cutting your power bills, like as Martin did, by up to 70%. Because the Albanese government is really focused on those two things, on the climate action we need and on helping Australians with the cost of living. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the honourable member for